The Atlanta Hawks announced yesterday that Trae Young will undergo surgery on his hand. He will be reevaluated in 4 weeks. Now, if you're looking at this reevaluated in 4 weeks, that means at the very least, I expect him to be out 6-7 weeks. And when you're looking at the rest of the season, that's about the entire season. I don't imagine the Hawks are going to push him very hard. They might not even be in a playoff spot when this is all said and done. I imagine if the Hawks do make the playoffs, or the play-in tournament, Trae Young will probably push to play in those games. But it's very possible that we are either we've already watched the last game that he's played in the Hawks, or we're only going to have a few more next, because if you ask Shams Charania, if you ask any of these NBA insiders, we've heard rumors, Jake Fisher, stuff like that they could be open to trading Trae Young, and it's something that we've talked about throughout this season. If I had to put odds on it or ask you the odds on it, what are the odds that Trae Young is back in a Hawks uniform next year?
I don't know. It's really hard for me to put an exact number on it. If you have one in mind, go ahead. I'm just seeing it from a fan point of view, and I'm going to give you both sides of it. It's like heartbreaking that we're even having to talk about this, that Trae Young, other than Dominique Wilkins, is the greatest player to ever wear a Hawks uniform. Obviously, there's some old guys I don't want to disrespect, but in recent history, Trae Young's the greatest player to wear a Hawks uniform, and we're talking about completely wasting his career in Atlanta other than that magical 2021 Eastern Conference Finals run. And the fact is this is a conversation that is currently being had. I hope it's not in Atlanta's front office because I personally don't want Trae Young to leave the city. The fact is, though, is what has this team done? Put yourself in Trae Young's shoes. What has this team done to show you that they're capable of putting a championship caliber roster together? Because I haven't seen it. Every move they've made has been disappointing, cost-cutting measures. The only one where I was really like, okay, they're going to go after it was the DeJounte Murray deal, and they ended up, overpaying against Travis Schlink's wishes. Schlink steps out. So, even the moves that were we're going for it, were made in jest of we're not going to listen to our general manager. We're going to listen to the owner and then his 27-something-year-old son. If you're Trae Young, obviously Hawks fan, I want Trae Young here. I want to figure out how to do it with Trae Young. And I think he wants to do it. He wants to bring a championship to Atlanta. But the realities we all must face, it might not work out.
Yeah, I mean, Trae Young hasn't really made any suggestions or any trade requests, but at the same time, that very well could be on the way. He's definitely started to get asked questions about the trade rumors. I believe he was asked at the NBA All-Star game, and he said it's part of the game and stuff like that, but he wasn't necessarily shutting it down anymore. I feel like in the past, there's been maybe questions or rumors where he's like, nah, I 100% want to play in Atlanta. And maybe that is changing. And if it is changing, it has every right to change, because this Hawks ownership group and this current front office has done nothing to help him out. They have not covered up defensive deficiencies. They've added another ball handling guard as their one big move. They've traded away pieces and cost cutting measures. It has not been, they haven't done anything well. So if he does want to force his way out, he has every right to. And this is a league in the NBA where stars have so much control. He only has 2 years left of his contract before he has a player option, which he will almost certainly decline to pick up a bigger contract the next time out. So it is about that time where the Hawks are going to have to make that decision, and they're stuck between a rock and the hard place. Do you trade away the best player or the second best player in franchise history if he demands a trade, or even if he doesn't demand a trade, for as much as you can get? Or do you try to build around him when you don't have a lot of room to maneuver? And it's just, I don't have any faith that they can do either of those things. So it's an unfortunate conversation to have. I think I speak for all Hawks fans. Everybody loves Trae Young.
Yep.
Everybody wants this guy to stay here. I don't think anyone, I know there's this narrative around the league that people try to push that it's Trae Young's fault. I don't think most Hawks fans, at least sane Hawks fans, believe that. I even saw some tweets after the Hawks win. Oh, maybe we are better with that. And listen, DeJounte Murray is
that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
DeJounte Murray is going to be better without Trae Young, and Trae Young's going to be better without DeJounte Murray. That's why the fit sucks. They're both really good players, but they're not better without Trae Young. I mean, let's be honest. They're 4-9 when he hasn't played this season. I mean, are they going to be the worst team in the NBA? No, they still have a couple of players. They're not going to be the Detroit Pistons, but they're not better. And frankly, they might still sneak in the playoff game with that playing game without him. But you're talking about being the 10th best team in the Eastern Conference. Yeah. It's not that hard.
No, what are we talking about? This is an all NBA guy. He's broken records, league records. I mean, this is absolutely asinine. I'm not even going to entertain that question. But this goes back to the questioning. And you know what I will say? I went to a couple of Hawks games recently. We ended up winning that Rockets game a couple of weeks ago. And I was talking to fans, having drinks, talking to people, and just trying to get a grasp of where a lot of Hawks fans' minds are at. And they're pointed at the right target. Most of them were talking about it's the guys upstairs. It's not Trae Young. It's not Quinn Snyder. It's the guys upstairs. And I think that's where you should have your fingers pointing. It's questioning the top guys, the wrestlers, the Landry Fields of the world. And though we have to talk about potentially trading Trae Young, let's play out the scenario where we don't, and we do try and kind of build a team around him that can succeed. We have to go back before we can go forward. Because like Chase said, there's not a lot of wiggle room unless Tony Ressler suddenly becomes comfortable paying a luxury tax fee, which he has shown in the past not to be comfortable with. He's done everything in his power not to pay the luxury tax. So I don't know why we'd go forward assuming he would.
Even that, there's not enough wiggle room for them to get to where they need to go. Maybe there's enough wiggle room.
So they have to go back.
Yeah,
they have to go back to go forward. And are we sure that we're going to trust first-time GM Landry Fields and his assistant GM and Kyle Korver, who has never held a front office position, to get us there?
No, I don't trust them at all. And does Trae Young want to go back?
Yeah.
Why would he want to go back?
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
If you're going to start blowing up this roster in the last couple years of his deals, there's no way he doesn't sit there and be like, hey, he wants you to push all the chips in, which you haven't done to this point. But at the same time, there's not a lot of reason to push the chips in, because unless they just somehow land a star player in the draft that like late in the draft, like in the 15th range or wherever they end up picking, I mean, there's just not a lot that they can do. Like you feel good about Jalen Johnson. You feel good about Trae Young. There's not a ton more that you feel good. I like DeJounte Murray as a player, but the reality of the situation is this is not a good fit. It hasn't been a good fit for the start. We thought Quinn Snyder, we had a little bit of hope. Maybe Quinn Snyder can make the most. He's this offensive guru, and he has been in the past, but sometimes there are things that just aren't fixable. And this appears to be one of those things. The Hawks have regressed every single season since that Eastern Conference Finals run, and there's no signs that is going to change. And if you try to go back, Trae Young's not going to want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I think, offensively, there's no issues. I mean, this team before the Trae Young injury is putting up historical offensive numbers. The issue is their defense is putting up historically bad numbers. So obviously, offense has not been an issue. It's always been the defense for most of the time. And that 2021 Eastern Conference Finals run, the defense was what really stepped up there late to help push that late season surge. So
I don't know what happened for that like 2-month stretch. All of a sudden the Hawks figured out how to play defense.
Solomon Hill, I'm telling you, Solomon Hill.
Yeah. I mean,
that guy.
We joked about it a lot when it was happening, but when you look back at it, I mean, just having a veteran like that, I really don't know what it was. I mean, for about 2 months there, they figured out how to play defense. And you look at the rest of the 4 years, they haven't played a lick of defense. Before that run, after the run, they haven't played defense. And this is a roster that lacks defenders. I mean, you're expecting them to play great defense. Well, Clint Capella's playing hobbled. He's really the only rim protector that you have. I like Okongwu and his switchability. Not exactly a great rim protector. The wings, DeAndre Hunter hasn't developed into that really star defender that we hoped when we drafted him. You haven't gone out there and got defensive wings to help out Trae Young.
You got Bogey out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a lot of liabilities on defense and you're expecting yourself to play defense, it's just shocker. Like shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker. You don't have defensive players, and you can't play defense. And that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. But very possible he played his last game in Atlanta. Coming up after the break, can Michael Harris become a superstar in 2024?